Yes, you upwardly mobile Brazilian middle class, I know exactly what you want. A big, imposing SUV with a modern, eye-catching design, but also with tech and comfort. Because yes, you really want to impress your friends at the club, the restaurant valet, but you also want to enjoy the fruits of your labor, right? You want to take advantage of the fact that your work gave you a little extra money so you can buy a car like this in the range of 250 to 300,000 Rs. And do you know what you did in the last few years? You ran out and fell head over heels for Chinese brands. Yes, GWM Haval H6 selling like crazy in Brazil. BYD, Song Plus and One, Pro, Primo, I don't even know how many there are, also selling like crazy. Several other players out there, GAC, Geely, and the more traditional automakers in our market who've been established in Brazil for decades were mostly left empty-handed. At the same time, Brazil's new middle class was rapidly embracing the Chinese. Then Volkswagen finally made a move, and look, they made a really strong move with their most global model today, the Tiguan. This generation sold in more than 80 markets, and the Tiguan R-Line, right? Perfect. Notice here the R-Line, the only version, finally arrives in Brazil at a very competitive price. Everyone was betting it would be over 300 grand, but this guy came in at 300 grand. 299,990, bringing 272 horsepower and all-wheel drive. You could even call it all-wheel drive because in practice this is like a Q5 or an Audi A5, right? It uses the same powertrain as Volkswagen. Visually, it's very elegant. The most beautiful color is that one, Pacific Blue. The one filming is Alex Rufo. He's recording over there. You'll see Alex Rufo later in this very video. I'd go for that one, the launch color. Check out these Aru 19-inch wheels. Take a look too, right? Even the most globalized product has to keep the Chinese market in mind, right? So those traditional ones with more than 4.60 meters and a really long wheelbase. So what does that give you as a result? Well, the traditional rear seat, a Chinese SUV seat, right? Very focused on the comfort of the rear passengers. I always say that, right? The dream of the Chinese, of China's upwardly mobile middle class, isn't to drive a big car, it's to be driven. So the back seat is very spacious, but in life, you know, you can't have everything. What does that lead to? A trunk that's less impressive, right? A trunk with 400 and something liters. It's a break from what the Tiguan has meant and still means in Brazil, right? You can see that, right? The single version does have electric assistance. Let me drink some Red Bull. We're at the Red Bull Bragantino Training Center. We recorded the T-Cross Seleção here, which you've already seen on the channel. First thing, right? What an interior. For Volkswagen haters, take a look. Want premium interior materials? Here you go, check this out. A rubberized finish here, followed by acrylic, then wood, then aluminum, then leather, and then a good quality plastic here, right? The most impressive Volkswagen interior nowadays, and it gives you a good idea of how competitive this car is when it comes to price, right? Because we're talking about a car here with 272 horsepower all-wheel drive with this second generation interior compared to what Volkswagen offers today, right? Costing 30,000 Rs, less than 30,000 Rs, 25,000 Rs, 10% more than a Jetta. The GLI, which is a less powerful car, front-wheel drive with a much simpler interior, right? You can see here the 15-inch screen and the digital cluster as well. Look how interesting, right? The start button is right here. And this selector here in the middle, besides adjusting the volume, it's also the mood selector, right? You also choose the driving modes here, comfort. And then, for example, you navigate there, comfort, sport, individual. This is one of my complaints about several cars, including Volkswagen's own Jetta GLI. You have to go through menus to change modes. Here, everything is on this central selector here. It's Volkswagen's return to a more premium segment, right? And this Tiguan is going to make its mark regarding the car. It's the fourth generation of the Tiguan, but we've only had 3 in Brazil, right? We had that first round-shaped Tiguan, which today would almost have the dimensions of a compact SUV, and it really stood out mainly for its performance, right? The transmission, 2.0 TSI engine DSG gearbox. Then we had the Tiguan, especially in the R-Line version, right? From the second generation with 7 seats. It was a car with all-wheel drive, 350 TSI engine, 7 seats, as I already mentioned. It was a product that was very, very sought after among enthusiast dads like me. And then in the third generation, instead of bringing the third one, because of ProConv issues, market reasons, right? This Tiguan comes from Mexico. Volkswagen ended up giving it a little facelift and taking away features from the previous Tiguan that we had. And then the car kind of died in our market, right? So this car, this new generation, is a quantum leap, right? We didn't have the third generation in Brazil. We're jumping from the second straight to the fourth. And this makes it very clear how much more equipment and onboard technology this car has. You can see it here. It's got seat cooling, which on a day like today, over 30 degrees here in Atibaia, is really necessary. It's got seat heating too, which in Brazil, you'll rarely need. It features massage seats and the latest generation VW Play with a highly responsive screen. It has the gear selector here in the combi style, right? Volkswagen has been using this rotary selector for some time now. And most importantly, right? In this battle of premium mid-size SUVs, it delivers performance. Take a look. You won't see it under this blazing sun, but the logo is LED lit, right? This whole front here has the LED bar. But the main news is right here, right? Here it is, the 5th generation EA888 making its debut in a Volkswagen product in Brazil. This engine first arrived in Brazil with the Audi lineup. And here we're talking about a machine, as I already mentioned, with 272 horsepower and 35.7 kilograms of torque. And we're talking about 0 to 100 in around 7.4 seconds. That's pretty good for a family SUV. Also, just a reminder, right? A big strength of this setup is that it comes with an 8-speed automatic transmission. Maybe even because of that longer 8th gear, the fuel economy is quite good, right? 12.5 on the highway for a car with this power, this weight, and all-wheel drive is a pretty interesting number. But let's do this. Let's see how it drives, buddy. And let's also get the impressions of the newest dad in town. After all, this is a car totally aimed at the successful dads of Brazil. Let's put the Tiguan through its paces with our partner Alex Ruff. Then we'll come back here for the final conclusions. Real television. Here I am on my very first drive in the new Tiguan, joined by the historic figure of Brazilian motorsport, Alex Ruff. Thank you very much, because you've already been there. Alex, do you want to see something about the Tiguan that I really like? Cooled seats have become a real game changer for me in our tropical country.
Today when I went to test the car, I pressed the buttons and surprisingly it even gave massages. Look, it has a lumbar massage feature.
Here, after a certain age, you also discover its value. This little combi style shifter here, look, you just twist it. Backup camera. This is one area where the Chinese competitors are still ahead, right? In China, backup cameras are always really good. Here the resolution is acceptable, but it's not that 4K you see in some cars in this segment. Let me see if I can figure this out here. I want to put it in sport mode. Mode, there's a shortcut here, mode. Now we're in sport mode. The screen is very responsive. The exit is this way. Exit, exit, where the big sign says exit. You, Alex, as a new father at 68 years old, no, the exit, that sign is to go that way.
But it's misleading. It shows that it's to the left. You imagine there's a little exit here.
It's a trick.
Because if we were there should just be an exit right in front here. But anyway.
But you, as a new father at 68, are tempted by the Tiguan because it's really a car aimed at families, right?
Man, I really liked it. I told you, Casio Cortez, I was impressed. Some things really impressed me. The comfort, the suspension, the drivability, the way you can drive with all the controls at hand. This huge screen, which we have to check out. I'll see what size it is in a moment.
Several inches,
a cluster in the front as well. It's very easy for you to see everything. And especially for kids, I see that they really enjoy it. The ones who sit in the back seat. My little daughter keeps looking up the whole time when there's this panoramic sunroof. So, man, it's the family car. Really, really, really cool. And it honestly impressed me.
Do you want to see something really cool, man? I have a 2-year-old son. Has your daughter already turned one?
She is 8 months old.
8 months. Noah is obsessed with airplanes and helicopters, right? Every time one goes by, he says, airplane, helicopter. And in the car with the sunroof open, he can see them. So he keeps looking up, airplane, helicopter. It gives the kids several more minutes of entertainment. But you saw it, right? I already sped up a bit there while we were talking. And there's something else, right, Alex? I think a Volkswagen is the kind of car that if you drove it blindfolded, you'd know it was a Volkswagen, right? There's a formula for the suspension setup and the steering weight. It's always that firm suspension, but without being punishing, you know? That's something that for people who like driving, it's a rewarding car. Let's put it that way.
I'll even make a comparison. I don't know if my colleagues on either side will like it very much, but I think it has the same vibe when you talk about suspension and comfort. This thing about not transferring the irregularities of the terrain into the cabin, even with tire noise with the Volvo. That's true, man. I tested a Volvo last week, the X30. Today I'm testing the Tiguan here. So the feel when driving is very similar and it's really impressive. Sometimes you go a while without driving a Volkswagen at this level, and when you do, it really impresses you. It really impressed me a lot.
Yeah, we've been missing Volkswagens of this level in Brazil in recent years because we didn't have the previous generation of the Tiguan here in Brazil. We had a facelift of the second generation to keep the car going, and some would say it didn't stay competitive. I almost went the wrong way here. There's a classic story in my family, also from a friend of my dad's, that at a fork in the road, when in doubt, whether it was to...
Did he go in the middle? He did. You've heard that before. Let's find out if that's how it is in real life.
He went down an embankment with his station wagon sometime in the 80s with his whole family inside.
Now, what I didn't like about the Tiguan and really liked about this one was the all space. Because for me, it didn't work for me. If the car wasn't good, I think it's way too big. Especially for Brazil, for urban mobility. Because even if you drive on the highway, to get to the highway, you have to go through city streets. And our streets aren't all that great. You'll have to park the car in a shopping mall parking lot. So I think this size here was ideal when the Tiguan was launched, and I always mention this to my colleagues at Volkswagen. It was the car that fit my driving style the most. The balance of the car is impressive. MCG, the first one.
The first one was very remarkable because at the time, with that 2.0 engine, which was the same as the Jetta TSI, 211 horsepower, it was way ahead of the rest of the segment in terms of performance. The car that made its mark.
It stood out.
And then the R-Line with 350 TSI and all-wheel drive with 7 seats. It was also a car that kind of became like the default. Back in 2018, that Tiguan R-Line was the successful dad car. Then there was the Procon issue, right? Volkswagen couldn't keep that powertrain. And then with the facelift, it dropped to 180 horsepower and front-wheel drive, kind of killed the car, and now it's back in full force with all-wheel drive, 270 horsepower, and...
Do you notice the extra 30 horsepower Casio Cortez?
No, it's almost 100 compared to the last one, right? That other Tiguan, this is the Tiguan that might be the most global of Volkswagen's cars today, right? It's a car that was sold the same way in many countries, and this formula here leaned a bit more towards China, right? Let's make that huge rear seat, even though it sacrifices the trunk a bit, right? The car's trunk is a bit small for the size of the car. And here in Brazil, the 7-seater version was dropped, right? In practice, right? I was about to say something, but I'll contradict myself because the Commander with 7 seats is a car that sells well, right? It's a niche. But it's a niche that has significance. But this Tiguan here comes to compete in a different segment. It comes to compete with the Haval H6 with the BYD Song Plus, targeting those who never really cared much about electrification, right? They wanted something that looked sharp, strong enough to impress at the condo, to impress the valet. Volkswagen enters this competition now, right?
And close to 300,000 reais was a very competitive price range in the market, right?
Yeah, you know what? It's really fun to compare prices and things, right? This car is basically a Q5 with a big discount, right? Or even the A5 itself, right? To get this same powertrain in the A5, you'd be spending about 70,000 reais more, right? With really nice finishing, it's something else, right? I mentioned driving blindfolded. Take this Volkswagen logo off here and put an Audi logo on it. In terms of material quality and all, you'd fool a lot of people.
Yeah, I thought the finishing was great too. I thought, like, you get in the car, you feel it. I'll talk about my first impressions. I always have this initial impact when I get in the car. I prefer to experience the car without seeing photos or videos first, so it has a greater impact on me. I got in the car, I saw the onboard technology, and for me, this really stands out, not just because of the size of the screen, but also because of the gadgets it has installed. The refinement of the materials and the finish also really stand out. And up front, when we got the car, the room was kind of dark, the TSO garage was a bit dim, and the emblem was lit up.
That really caught our attention. And you know how it is, right? Now I'm using this 8-speed transmission, right? I think it's the ZF that became the industry standard in Germany. It avoids the dual clutch, right? The previous one had the DSG, which is something that always makes people in the Brazilian market a bit hesitant. This little stretch of winding road that I like, I use it a lot, Alex, when we go out. The tourists pass by here. I think this stretch here is like a mini Nürburgring. Because you have a lot of elevation changes and rough pavement, you really feel the car's dynamics and the paddle shifters here. The transmission responds really quickly. It's much more of a car. To keep in this context, it's much more for someone who likes to drive than a Haval H6 or a BYD Song Plus. Yeah, it's really like, let's say Volkswagen is bringing an SUV for the enthusiast dad, right?
In your view, you've already mentioned two there. Volvo, did you mention BYD? There's also the Song Plus. Who are they competing against in the market, man?
Against those guys and the Commander, right? I think the Commander Hurricane, the Hurricane engine, right? The Blackhawk version. The Commander obviously has the big advantage of offering a 7-seat option and a huge trunk as well. I always joke about it, right, Alex? I have the 2002 Sequoia, right? You could fit the entire Flamengo fan base inside, but for someone with small kids, a big dog, and needing space, it's great. I still ride a bike though. So I'm a guy who's always keeping an eye on this 7-seater market. The Tiguan isn't competing anymore. So the Commander, for this type of consumer, it's kind of on its own in this 7-seater segment. Do you know what the direct competitor to the Commander Blackhawk is for me in Brazil? The GLB 35 AMG costing 100,000 more, you know? 7 seats with a sporty edge. The Tiguan brings that sportiness. And I think it also brings something we were missing a bit, right? Like we said, this very fresh design, right? A product that's exactly that. It's sold abroad. And automotive journalists at launch events love to play fortune teller, right? Will it sell or not? I think this car will sell.
Were you impressed by the announced price, or did you expect it to be higher?
I think Volkswagen made an effort just to keep that magic number 2 at the front, right?
I was thinking 339, right? This one was 349. It's a little high, but 339 would be an honest price for me. 299,990. And it only comes in one version, right? R-Line.
Single R-Line trim, right? Which was well known, right? From that generation I mentioned, 7 seats, 350,000, but let's do the following then. Let's take a breath and go to our final conclusions. If there's a bit of mountain road before this, I'll come back so we can speed up a bit more. Conclusions, that's the plural of conclusion. Final conclusions about the new Tiguan R-Line. It's very simple. It's going to sell. It's going to sell a lot. However many Volkswagen Brazil can bring from Mexico, they're going to sell. Because even though a lot of people, like that friend of yours who bought a Haval H6, that friend who bought a Song Plus, say, oh, I really wanted something hybrid, you know? Something a bit more focused on environmentalism. We know that in practice, Brazilians don't care at all. They should care much more about the planet and the environment. What does a person buying a 30,000 real SUV in Brazil want? Everything I said at the beginning, which you can sum up in a single word, status, in the words of the Rei do Camarote. People want to impress, have an impressive car, and own a great product. And the Tiguan delivers all of that. It offers a lot of performance, a lot of design, a lot of technology, a lot of driving pleasure. And that, for me, is its big advantage over the Chinese competitors. It's a car that's dynamically much more interesting than the average in this segment when we look at the Chinese ones. And it's priced competitively, which was another common criticism of Volkswagen. On Brazilian automotive websites, people also criticize the interior materials of Volkswagen. In the real world, people who buy cars care very little about that. But the fact is that the Tiguan's interior finish is also very impressive. And because of that, but mainly for me, because it's really good looking, for those of you who like to play cards, the car is going to sell. Also, don't forget, it's a Volkswagen. Do you agree or disagree? Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where the new Tiguan stands for you in the fierce competition among mid-size SUVs in the national market. And by the way, another interesting thing, Volkswagen became the retail sales leader in Brazil this year, surpassing Fiat at the beginning of the year. So it seems that the more the Brazilian automotive internet criticizes Volkswagen, the more cars it sells. That's crazy. Thanks a lot. Take care and big hugs.